You're listening to Seminary Dropout, episode 47, and I'm your host, Shane Blackshear. This week on the show, I'm going to tell you some things I'm thankful for, and I'll sit down and have a talk with author, musician Carlos Whittaker. All this and more on this week's episode of Seminary Dropout. Let's go. Thank you for joining me, friends. Today is July 29th, and today is my birthday. And I am kind of just very overcome. I am just overcome with a lot of gratitude today. Today, people on my Facebook wall and a lot of you on Facebook and on Twitter have been wishing me a happy birthday. I don't know how everyone got wind of that. I think Graham Ware is probably responsible for that. He probably saw it on Facebook and then announced to the Twitter world. Regardless, I want to say thank you so much for all the kind words that people have given me. It's so funny when I see it's somebody's birthday on Facebook, and a lot of times I think I want to go say happy birthday to them on Facebook, but I think it's so trite, just to say happy birthday on Facebook. It's so cheap, it's so easy. Then on my birthday, when people do that, it is so incredibly meaningful that someone took just a second out of their day to say that. So I'm just really grateful. I have the best of everything. I have the best friends, I have the best wife, the best baby girl, parents, in-laws. I'm just so thankful, and I'm very thankful for all of you. I struggle with how to properly express that. And let me give you an example of something that makes me so incredibly thankful. There are other podcasts with tons of other downloads, other listeners per week, or whatever kind of metric you want to use. And a lot of those podcasts have half or a fraction of the ratings and reviews on iTunes that Seminary Dropout has. So what it tells me is I'm lucky enough to have an audience who really appreciates what is going on here. And so I just want to say thank you for that. That means so, so much to me. And so, those of you who I've gotten to know off of Facebook, off of Twitter, which, by the way, I've been meaning to say this for a while. If you follow me on Twitter and I don't follow you back and you're a listener to the show, get my attention. My purpose is to follow everybody who follows me who is not spam or doesn't say repulsive things on the internet. So I love having conversations, even if they're over Twitter or Facebook, with people who listen to the show and love this show. And so I'm just so, so grateful for all of you today. That is most of the kind of housekeeping, so to speak, that I have this week. I do want to remind you of one more thing. Most of you will remember the episode just a few back, 3 or 4 back, with David Leo Schultz, who is the director of Ragamuffin, the Rich Mullins biopic. And they're doing this really cool thing. First, if you haven't seen the movie, go see the movie. If you haven't heard my interview with David, the director, then listen to that, and then read my review of Ragamuffin. They are doing this really cool thing, David and along with some others who were responsible for the movie. They're doing this thing called Ragamuffin Retreats, where they hold this weekend retreat and they do some spiritual formation stuff. There's only 3 of them across the entire country. One is going to be really close to myself here in Texas, and I'm going to be there. And so you should come, especially if you're near the Texas one. It's going to be let's see. Let me pull up this map here. I think it's Lexington. Yeah, Lexington, Texas, which is about an hour or so away from Austin, where I am. So I'm going to be there. You should come there too. It's about a little over 2 hours from San Antonio, 2.5 hours from Houston, 3 hours from Dallas. Excuse me. Kind of centrally located. So if you're in Texas, you should go to that. It's going to be November 7th and 9th. 7th through 9th. There's also going to be one in Pennsylvania, October 24th through 26th. And then there's one in Michigan coming up soon, September 12th through 14th. If you can make it, you should. If you need more information, you can go to my website, go to seminarydropout.com, scroll down and look on the right side there, and I've got a little picture that says Ragamuffin Retreats. Click on that, and it'll take you and give you all the info you need, and you can register and just find out more if you want to. So I wanted to plug that. I'm not officially affiliated with the retreats or anything, but I like what they're doing there. There's David Mullins, who's Rich Mullins' brother, is going to be there and speaking and talking, and so it's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited for it. So I would love to meet some of you there in the Texas location if you can do it. So that's it. Not much for the housekeeping stuff this week. We're going to move on to this great interview that I had with Carlos Whittaker. Carlos Whittaker is a renowned musician, worship leader, blogger, and communicator. He has been the worship leader for Andy Stanley's Buckhead Church in Atlanta and is on the leadership team for Catalyst, as well as being the leading worship at many other events. Carlos Whittaker, thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, bro.
So I want to talk a little bit about your upbringings. You were the son of a pastor growing up. I'm curious about what kind of impact that had on your life. What was that like?
Yeah, it had a fantastic impact. It had a horrible impact. It had, but kind of both. Both and yes, and it. Growing up, I think when you grow up in the home of a minister, you definitely err on the side of just allowing their faith to become your faith, which I think when you're growing up, maybe that's okay. But when you get into your young adulthood, if you just kind of keep hanging on to those truths and you don't find out the truths for yourself, that's when kind of chaos starts to happen in your life. And so I kind of had the best of both worlds. I grew up in a great home, knew all the Bible stories, was at church all the time. And it wasn't just what you would consider a consuming church culture that I was a part of. I mean, I remember moments in my childhood where I really felt deeply connected to God. But all the way up to my late 30s, I remember there was just something missing and trying to figure out what that was. And it took me kind of escaping away for a couple days and wrestling with God and realizing that I placed a lot of my identity in Christ, and I think my dad's identity in Christ, in pastors I looked up to, their identity in Christ, in pastors I worked for, their identity in Christ. And there wasn't a lot of my own identity in that. And so I, through a lot of wrestling, I've come to a place where I'm pretty satisfied right now. In my relationship with religion, in my relationship with Christianity, and in my relationship with Christ, in those three facets. But so I think good and bad. So set me up right, but I think I had the ball on the tee a little too long.
I like that.
Yeah.
Music is a big part of your life. Did you grow up around music? Did you have family members who were into music?
My mom and dad both are completely tone deaf. And so, that wasn't really something that was kind of given to me through my family. For me, music has always been a lot of work. And I'm not the best vocalist. I'm not the best guitar player, instrumentalist. So it's always been a lot of work. I never was somebody that was naturally just gifted. These kids that you see walk on America's Got Talent and just blow people away. Like, I couldn't do that. And so for me, it was a lot of vocal lessons, but it was something that I loved, and so I worked really hard at it. And it's been fun to kind of see where that has taken me. Really, for the majority of my adult life, music has been the thing that's paid the bills. And so, obviously, I've had a great love affair with music, and that won't ever end. But right now, I'm in more of a season where I'm doing a little less music. So.
When was it for you that you decided that music and leading worship and those things would be, more than a hobby or an interest, but would pay the bills, so to speak, like you said?
Yeah, for me, it definitely was something that chased me as opposed to me chasing it. I've got a lot of friends that, man, they wanted to be a band, and they made demos and they recorded things. They send them into labels, and that whole. And for me, that just wasn't really the case. I became friends with a friend of mine who planted a church called Sandals Church in Riverside, California, down in Southern California. And, just kind of started hanging out with him. And he found out through the grapevine that I played guitar. And he's like, hey, would you mind playing guitar? And I was like, so I played every once in a while. But there was someone else that was a worship leader. And then one Sunday, I remember, they actually had me sing the song "Worlds Apart" by Jars of Clay. Now that should date me as to when that happened, but I remember when I was singing it, like I felt a little naked singing it by myself. So I asked the crowd to sing with me, and I guess I kind of led them in worship during the song. And I just remember after that, the pastor, Matt Brown, came up to me and he's like, "Hey man, I think you really should try leading worship." And so I kind of started then, and man, that next Sunday was really the beginning of, I would say, almost 20 years of every Sunday leading worship somewhere. So, it's definitely been a wrestling match with it sometimes. I know a lot of way better singers than me, but I do feel like I've developed a really good skill set as far as taking people from point A to point B in a worship service.
Right now you lead at Crosspoint there in Nashville.
Yeah.
Some people might know is the church where Andy Stanley is. If someone goes, went to Crosspoint, would you probably on most Sundays, are you going to be the guy up front leading worship?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm probably there once a month, and I travel the rest of the time. And so Crosspoint's my home church, and it's where I volunteer. I was on staff at North Point in Atlanta for 3 years, and that was the end of kind of my staff time on church. And so now, like, I kind of feel like I work more for the global church. So there's some months I'm there twice a month, some months I'm there once a month. I'd say this summer I'm probably not even going to be there at all. I'm booked pretty solid through the summer, just kind of traveling around the country. And but when I am there, I normally do tweet it, put it on my Facebook, and it's normally at the Nashville downtown campus.
You and your wife Heather, you adopted a son a few years ago. It seems like adoption has been kind of a cause that you've taken up, so to speak.
Yeah.
What first, was that something always in the back of your mind, like, maybe we'll adopt someday, or did it come about unexpectedly?
Yeah, Losai's 8 years old, and we adopted him when he was 6 months old. And so, I guess, man, it's almost 10 years ago that we started the process. And this was before there was lots of information online about adoption. This was before everybody was like, I'd love to adopt one day. And so really everyone we talked to about adoption was like, you guys are crazy. Why would you want to do that? And so there wasn't this movement of adoption back in the day. And so for us, I just remember we had $2.67 in our bank account. And when we felt the call to adopt, we just looked at each other and we just said, well, let's go for it. And so, it was 2 years of raising money, of garage sales, of fundraisers, of, buy your plate and come to dinner kind of things. And lots of grants, my wife doing a lot of work, but we actually ended up raising every single cent that we needed to go adopt Losiah. And, and so we filmed the entire process when we were in South Korea. So there's like this 13 episode YouTube documentary that I, just kind of filmed back. This is, again, 8 years ago. So with my flip cam. And so it's horrible quality, but all of those videos have been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. And since then, they've become pretty stringent on allowing you to document your process while you're there. We luckily got in before they started doing that. So it's really one of the only places you can go online to really see what it's like from when you get on the plane and in America, fly to South Korea, land. We documented the entire social worker process. We were there for a couple weeks, picking up our son and then coming home. So it's been fun to, hear people that have seen the video and it's led them to adoption, and they've got kids here because they've watched those videos. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see Christians really almost en masse, take up that cause of adoption. I think it's been a really beautiful thing.
Absolutely. It's something that it's not, obviously it's not just adoption. We live in a very justice-minded generation now, and whether it's sex slaves, whether it's adoption, whatever it might be, I feel like the church is doing a better job at rising up and kind of standing in the gap for a lot of these injustices.
Yeah, no doubt. Well said.
Yeah.
You've been pretty open about the fact that at one time you kind of felt like you came close to losing your family and a lot of things that you cared about because of the time that you had given to the church.
Yes. Yeah. Man, it's such a dangerous, it's such a thin line between ministry, I feel like, and murder of your family. And a lot of people are walking really, thinly on that line. And Some people even, I guess there's kind of two facets of it. There's the facet of being overworked, right? So if you're part of really any church, I mean, I'm talking about, I was at New Spring Church in Anderson, South Carolina this weekend, and although they put as many parameters around their staff as they can, I know that there's staff there that probably loves their job so much because they make it such an amazing place to work that they're probably still going to overwork themselves. And or you can go to to the church plant side of things where you have to overwork in order for the church to even make it week by week. So there's that one place, and that's the place that I find a lot of people sitting in. But then there's also the other place where they're kind of replace the intimacy that they need to have with their wives and with their kids and with their husbands, whoever it might be, and they're replacing that intimacy with the intimacy they have with the church. And I think that's a very dangerous place to be. And a lot of people love their job with the church more than they love their family. And I think they're confusing church with God. And the church isn't isn't our God. The church is the bride of Christ. And so the church definitely does not need to be ahead of your family. And so I think there's kind of two facets where people can really kind of take a step back from where they are, take a look and say, okay, am I working too hard because I have to, or am I working too hard because I don't want to be around my family? And, sometimes, listen, there's still moments in my day where my wife doesn't want to be around me. And there's moments in my day where I don't want to be around my kids. And that's normal. And I think that's okay. We shouldn't confuse that. But at the same time, we just have to be careful and always take a step back and always pause and say, okay, why am I doing what I'm doing? And why am I ministering today? Am I ministering today because I don't want to be with my family, or am I ministering today because God has called me to minister today? And it's a thin line, but I feel like it's something that we can trip up on.
I was listening to some kind of, I can't remember what it was ages ago. I was listening to kind of a radio story about these guys who were evangelists like right after World War II in that time period. Yeah. And they would go away and, sometimes overseas and things like that, just them away from their family for like months at a time, and how, but because they viewed what they did as this calling from God, they felt like it gave them license to, be absent for long periods of time. Yeah. It seems like we've just kind of gotten a little more sophisticated about that. Like we may sleep there at night, but we still don't see, our families for such long periods of time sometimes.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the case, not just in the church, but in life in general, business and education and all that. We have such access to communicate that we don't stop communicating. And just today I grabbed a box and I put the word phone on it and I put it by my front door because I will constantly, there's always a good reason to reply to somebody. There's always a good reason to encourage somebody. And I can't imagine if my parents had the same struggles that I have, not being present with my kids because of a phone, because of these things that are supposed to make our life better, but they're making things a lot more complicated. And so, there's always going to be a good reason to minister. At some point, we just have to stop. We have to stop. We have to clock out, and it's okay to clock out.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your book, Moment Maker. Sure. I think this is your first book. Is that right?
This is absolutely my first book.
Okay.
Yes.
What made you think? I mean, you're a busy guy. We're just talking about that. You've made CDs. You're doing all kinds of stuff, working in the church and stuff like that. You do coaching. What made you think I need to add a book to this repertoire?
Yeah, I've had this blog called ragamuffinsoul.com that I've been writing on for 9 years almost, and up until this last year, it was pretty much a daily ritual. And the reason why I stopped is because I started writing a book and I don't have any more time to write on it. But so I'd had publishers coming up to me and, hey, you've got this platform, you have this audience, you've got thousands of readers a day, you need to write a book. And they always wanted me to write a book about worship leading because that's what I do to pay the bills. And so, or the creative process, or, how to plan Andy Stanley's sermon series, these were the books they were putting in front of me. And every single time I was like, God, that would be awful. Like, that's not what I want to write a book about. If I'm going to spend time in front of a laptop typing, I want it to be something that I'm passionate about. Not that I'm not passionate about the creative process and about leading worship. But, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm passionate about doing those things for 1 hour stretches at a time. 1 hour on Sunday, 1 hour on Wednesday night. Okay, so that's as much as I'm literally leading worship. So if you look at what I do, I really have a lot more time to do other things. So I took a step away from a couple steps away, kind of from my life, to look at it in general. And I realized that my family and I, every time I would blog about a moment that my family would have, or a big trip that my family would take, those would be the posts on Ragamuffin Soul that would go viral. Those would be the posts that people would really gravitate towards. So I started researching what were the posts that people really enjoyed reading, that they kept sharing with each other. And every single one of them had to do with a moment in my family. And so I kind of dissected that. And I said, you know what? I think we live this moment-making life that I'd love to study a little bit more. So I really started researching my family, what we were doing, and I realized that there were 3 types of moments that we really try to make on a daily basis. We create moments, we receive moments, and we rescue moments. So then, man, once I laid those three things out, that thing started applying to every single thing that I do, whether it's leading worship, whether it's working at a church, whether it's the other day just complimenting 20 strangers on the plane and complimenting one woman. It's probably an 80-year-old black woman that had some pearls on, and I said, "Those are some beautiful pearls." And tears literally formed in her eyes because I feel like she had not been complimented in so long. And so I realized every single day I'm going to create, I'm going to receive, and I'm going to rescue moments. And I'm going to help people live their life as opposed to having their life live them. So suddenly here comes Carlos, the worship leader, minister guy, writing this kind of self-help book. And, I think 4 years ago, a publisher would have never let me write that. But I think we've lived enough moments out loud in front of people that they said, hey, I think this is going to be a good thing. So it was a blast to write. And, man, I'm having so much fun talking about it. And just kind of helping people live this moment-making lifestyle.
What do you think is the difference between the message that you're bringing in, Moment Maker, and just kind of a general, like, secular carpe diem message that can exist with or without Jesus? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, no. So you're asking me what's the difference between Oprah and me?
Exactly.
And so, obviously here's what I believe. I believe that although you can call myself, I call myself a Christian because I believe that Christ lives and functions through me. I also believe that Christ is in Oprah. She just doesn't know it. Okay. I believe that Christ is in Chris Martin. He just doesn't know it, right? So when he composes these beautiful songs, I believe that they're coming from a place that he's confused about, that he doesn't understand, because we're all created in the image of God. Therefore, every single human being has this thing inside of them that is a beautiful thing that they want to live in this grand type of way. So I set that answer up with that because I feel like everything that Oprah tries to help people do is actually things that God wants us to do. I think that God wants us to live a fantastic, fun life. Now, here's where I come in with a little different spin on things. The reason why I want people to live a moment-making life is not for the sake of just having a fantastic life, because at the end of the day, you're just going to die. And what was the use? But if you live a moment-making life for the sake of people seeing Christ fresh, at that point, it becomes discipleship. And at that point, people start seeing, Christ as this moment-making God. I mean, Jesus was not a boring Jesus. Like, he walked on the road to Emmaus. He sneaks up to his 2 disciples. He disguises himself, right? Which I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? Like, he put a mask on. He put some different clothes on. He disguises himself. He walks for miles heading west down the road to Emmaus, lets them cry about what they've experienced, and they miss Jesus, and they heard that he's alive, and he's asking them to explain it. Then he continues on acting like he's going to go somewhere else, and his disciples are like, no, come to dinner with us. So, like, he's just continuing on this play, right? Then he sits down with them, he breaks bread, and when they recognize that it's him, he disappears. And so I started looking at Jesus, and I said, holy crap, like, this man is a moment-making Christ. Like, he did not do things that didn't have a purpose. He created, he received, and he rescued moments. So hopefully as people read my book and they hear my message, man, it's like twofold. It's like, you're going to live a fantastic life. You're going to have a blast, but people around you are going to go, why are you living this life? Why are you having a blast? And suddenly you're going to be able to explain to them, well, let me tell you about a guy that made even better moments than I did. So it's been fun to kind of obviously tie those 2 camps together.
And the best part about the book to me is that you're telling stories, mostly about your family and some just about you, but it's so, it's just fun read. It's really fun to read, and it's not just kind of like a professor sitting down saying, let me share this wisdom,
Right.
but it's based on these great stories that you've had, and you really, kind of lived out that message. My favorite story from the book, if it's okay for me to ask you to share, is one where you're sitting in your coffee shop one day, and this very tall and person who doesn't look like she belongs in Nashville walks in. Can you share that story?
Absolutely. I'll take it a step farther. It was a very tall and attractive, what I thought was a female that came walking in, and then when she ordered her coffee, her voice was 2 octaves lower than mine, and I realized, okay, this isn't normal. This is starting to look a little bit more like Vegas than it does Nash Vegas. And so, again, the moment maker inside of me couldn't just, she sat down, she started having her coffee, couldn't just let it pass. Like, I wanted to know, like, what was the story? So I walked over to her, and her name was Nicole, and she said, she kind of looked at me like she wanted to fight. Like, I was coming up to, like, harass her some way. And I said, no, I just kind of want to know your story. Like, I've never, because you let me know, like, I think I may have even said, why is your voice so deep? Like, I was that blatant. So she said, well, I'm a transgender. Okay, not a transvestite, a transgender. And she started explaining to me what transgender was. And I started, my eyes were open to her world. And probably the second I asked her what her story was, she probably talked for 30 minutes without letting me have one word in otherwise. And I realized nobody ever asks Nicole her story. Nobody is ever asking her about her story. So I thought that was going to be the end of it. I thought, like, well, that's cool. I learned a little bit about transgenders. She feels a little bit more loved because I asked her. But then something inside of me said, hey, I should ask her to hang out. So I said, hey, what are you doing tonight? And, or she may have asked me, I can't remember. But we ended up downtown Nashville on Broadway later that evening in front of a bar called The Stage. And it's a honky-tonk bar, and I was waiting for her, and she brought a bunch of friends, and they were all transgenders, and they come leaping, slow motion, Ocean's 11-esque out of the cab. And sure enough, these rednecks around me started screaming profanities at them, and Nicole and her friends started screaming profanities back. And I just remember it was like all slow motion, and I'm like, okay, wait a second. Am I going to fight for Nicole? Am I going to, like, throw punches at the rednecks, or am I going to try to stop the fight? And I just remember grabbing Nicole and saying, you're worth more than this. Let's go dance. Let's go have fun. And she looked at me and she goes, who are you, Carlitos? And I said, I'm just a normal guy that thinks you're worth it. So we went inside and we danced for a while. And, I invited her to church. And, whether or not she ends up coming to my church, I don't think is the point. I think the point is that she knows that I love Jesus and that I wasn't judging her, and that I was going to be part of her community, and I was going to value her for the valuable work of God that she is. And, I told that story in the book just so people, again, could step outside of their comfort zones and realize that there's moments that they can rescue for people all the time just by saying hello. Who knows if I wouldn't have landed on that plane with the black woman in the pearls, if she was sitting next to me, where that conversation would have led. So, the simplest smile, the simplest hello can create a moment that we never expected.
Mm. What I like about that Nicole story the most is that she didn't, more than anything, she didn't need to know your theology of sexuality,
No. Yeah.
but she needed to know that here's a Christ follower that just loved her. And cared about her story and who she was. Yeah.
I didn't ask her where she stood on gay marriage. She didn't ask me where I said, there was none of that. There was just life and love and conversation. And man, I'm telling you, it's so simple, and we make it so complicated. As an author and friend of mine, Bob Goff says all the time, it's just love, like love, doing love, and love does everything, and that's really all we need. And it sounds so elementary and so simple, man. But I've seen I've seen nations heal because of love as opposed to because of politics. So.
Well, What kind of projects do you have in the works right now? Or are you just kind of on the tour promoting the book these days?
Yeah, I am. Gosh, man, recently, obviously, it's really a lot about the book right now. So I'm talking about the book. We talked about the book this weekend. I'm flying to Texas tomorrow to talk about the book. Lots of talking about the book. But I'm still leading worship on Sundays. I was at Perry Noble's Church, New Spring, this weekend, leading worship. Doing a lot of consulting. I hung around with the New Spring worship and creative arts team all day yesterday, and I spent 8 hours just kind of pouring into them and helping them navigate through some different systems and strategies that they're up to right now. So I'm consulting a lot. I've got a worship leading coaching curriculum that's coming out in August, and I'm filming that at Crosspoint here at my church. It's going to be 8 hours of coaching for worship leaders that I'm going to be releasing through my blog. Man, I've got so much happening right now that sometimes I wonder, when people ask me what I do, I never have a clear answer as to what I do. So I've got that happening. I've got some TV stuff that I'm working on, some reality show stuff that, I'm pitching and trying to do some things. And, man, I'm blessed to be in a life where I can really try a whole bunch of things and fail at a whole bunch of things. I pretty much think that for every 5 things I try, maybe 2 of them are going to succeed and 3 of them are going to fail. But the problem is that, I try all of them in front of a lot of in front of a lot of people. Here's a great example. Like, I'm looking at you. I was kind of doing a little research, right, on who's Shane, like what's he doing, and I started a podcast called the Pew Party Podcast maybe 6 months ago.
Okay.
And it exploded the first 2 weeks, right? And I'm like, it's like in front of Joel Osteen's podcast, in front of Andy Stanley's podcast, and everyone's digging it. And I did like 4 amazing episodes, and then I ran out of time and I quit. And so like there's a podcast with 4 episodes sitting on it, but then I look at a guy like you and I'm like, okay, all of a sudden I can see you've got this like nice mic in front of you. I can tell you just hit record. You've got some system, but again, that was one of the failures for me. But I'm going to keep trying these things because when you're creative, you just got to keep trying and failing until you succeed.
Carlos, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It's been fun talking with you.
Yeah, Shane, thanks so much for having me. And I love what you're doing. And I'm subscribed to the podcast now. And I'm gonna be listening out. It'll be fun.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. That's all for the show today, friends. Thank you so much for listening. I want to thank Elizabeth Harden for the very kind review that you left on iTunes. Elizabeth, I greatly appreciate it. Please remember, go subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. That keeps the show front and center. Speaking of which, hey, you listening to this on your iPhone or iPod Touch if you're listening from 2006. I found out this really cool thing that you can do while you're listening. If you go into the podcast app and click on the track that you're listening to now, it'll bring up the Seminary Dropout logo. Click on that logo, and you know what it does? It shows you the show notes for the show. So you could, 1, click on the rate review link, go in there and rate and review the show, or you could click on the link that will take you to Carlos's links, or it'll take you to my website, any one of those links. But I think it's pretty cool. You get to see those show notes there on your mobile device. All right, that's it. Please join us next time for another great episode of Seminary Dropout. Take care, friends.
So I could live